I'm really, really delighted to have Barb Jungr here to do our final event of 2020 and our special Christmas event. It's such an honor because Barb is a real star. I mean, I've had lots of real stars on these shows, but Barb is a real star, as in internationally recognized. She does wonderful concerts all over the world, all over the country. If you haven't been to one, I'm sure many of you have, but if you haven't been to one, I really would advertise her as a priority for when we all begin to get back to being able to go to concerts again. And I was very devastated, as I'm sure she was, that her last concert in London was cancelled because of the announcement of the lockdown in early November. So it's such an honor to have her. And what we're going to do, I'll explain a little bit about what we're going to do and then do a couple of other quick things. But what we're going to do is Barb is going to talk for about 20 or 30 minutes. I sent out in Eventbrite with a Zoom link, I sent out a list of the tracks that she's going to talk about. And we did discuss the idea of playing them as we go. However, the sound, as you probably noticed if you came in early enough, the sound on Zoom really is not particularly brilliant, and it was sounding quite tinny, and I think it started to upset Barb, so I switched it off about 3 or 4 minutes ago. And it's just, not good enough for these brilliant pieces of music. So we would really encourage you to go and check the songs after this event, after you've listened to Barb rave about them and tell you why they're so good and tell you what to listen for. And hopefully you'll get an extended experience of enjoyment from this event as a result of that. So I think let me just check my notes. I think that's the main point I wanted to make. Oh, the other thing is, if you do decide that you want to try and listen to the tracks on as we go along, you can definitely do that, but please check that you're muted. I'll mute all now, but it is quite important that you don't let the sounds in your own home leak through into the sort of like the Zoom environment. So I'd be very grateful if you could be careful of that, especially if you're trying to listen to music. And then before I go any further, what I wanted to do is introduce myself. I'm Wendy Earl, by the way. I run the Academy of Ideas Arts and Society Forum, and we've been running Zoom events throughout the COVID experience, but have been in existence for a lot longer than that, since I think 2011, it says on the Facebook page. And we run discussions, debates about the arts in society, the arts for themselves, the debates around the arts and that sort of thing. And please do join us whenever you see a notice. We're on Facebook, and the notices about events are put up there, and also on the Academy of Ideas website. And that brings me to the Academy of Ideas, which is an amazing organization that has been running for a good deal of time now, with people who work really energetically for not fantastic remuneration, and have kept open throughout this whole COVID thing, where funding has almost completely dried up. So if you're thinking about giving a Christmas present to a good cause, can I recommend the Academy of Ideas? And I'll aim to put a link up so you can make a donation while Barb is speaking. So that's it. So I think what we'll do is we'll continue now. Barb will talk for 20 or 30 minutes, whatever I've said, whatever length of time she wants to talk, really, because I'm sure it'll be fascinating. And then, come in with your questions and points. If you hate the music, that's fine, you can say so. If you love the music, that's fine, you can say why. We'll have a very relaxed discussion, hopefully, after Barb has given us her insights. So I'm going to now unmute Barb so she can speak.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this. It's been such an interesting thing to think about. It's always impossible to, I think talking about influences is really tricky always, because I'm influenced by everything. every single thing that happens every day somewhere is an influence. It can't help but be so. But if I had to nail down some things, I nailed them down to 4, and I've kind of done them ish chronologically in my life. And the first is South Pacific. I need to give you a tiny little bit of background because I'm a first generation Brit, so I'm a Brit through and through, but only as long as my little feet were on this planet. And I grew up in Rochdale, in the houses that they pulled down, what we would now call a slum, with a bath that you went to in the high street next to a butcher's with tripe on hooks and sawdust on the floor. And then we went to see South Pacific, the film, because my parents didn't have any association of music with anything except music. So they took me to opera. They took me, I was a baby. They took me to the cinema. They just took me. They took me to everything. We went to the local parish church's performances. We went to opera when it came to Manchester. We went to the D'Oyly Cart. We went and we saw everything. We saw variety shows. And they took me to South Pacific. And that's when the rot set in. And I do blame them for everything because of that. Because South Pacific, it was I mean, how did I know? I didn't know that it was a musical made into a film. To me, it was a real thing that was happening in this extraordinary place. Now, the film of South Pacific is quite particular. It's made in 1958, and they've just discovered how to tint film. So everything in it is in these, the colours that are happening in this film are colours you've never seen anywhere in the world before or since. It's an extraordinary set of palette that they've used, where they've created this this mythical South Sea island. And the film opens with Bloody Mary singing Bally High. And I don't think I've ever felt about a musical the way I feel about South Pacific and Rodgers and Hammerstein's work, because to me it's perfect. It's a perfect musical, and I've been in endless debates about whether West Side Story is better, but for me South Pacific is without doubt a trailblazer, and that's largely because it does something that symbolizes everything that I like. It has in it politics, it has a sort of real sense that it's not directed at only one set of people. It isn't only directed at people who've got, you know, some kind of degree in understanding whatever it is. It's absolutely for anybody who can read it at any level. It's full of the most extraordinary tunes, beautiful, beautiful melody, to say nothing of the orchestrations. It's set against the war in the South Pacific, and in it explores, which were in 1958 on a film, extraordinary things. So you've got, so my dad bought the gatefold sleeve album for us, and all the pictures are in there. I used to just play it over and over. I can sing the whole musical. It's quite sad, really. It was inspired by short stories from World War II. Mitzi Gaynor plays Nellie Forbush, and she's from the Midwest. She's from Arkansas, somewhere like that. And she comes in and she falls in love with this rogue Frenchman. He's a rogue Frenchman. Emile de Bec, he's called. And he's played by Rossano Brazzi, who's kind of a silver fox of a kind of guy. And she's young and perky. Nobody really comments on any of this in later years, and I think it's probably just as well. But what she discovers is that he's got 2 children, and the 2 children are not French. The 2 children have got certainly features that one wouldn't associate with Caucasian Nellie. So she's shocked by this, and her entire world is thrown into disarray because she was in love. But now how can she be in love? Because she's confronted with this essential problem. At the same time, Bloody Mary, who's a kind of shaman figure, alchemist shaman, lures Lieutenant Cable, who's our male lead, to the island Bally High. And she does that because she's got the most beautiful daughter on the island, and she's identified him as the person who can save her daughter from living in the island for the rest of her life, and perhaps give their children a better life. And he's confronted with the fact that he's brought up in an Ivy League tradition, due to go back and marry somebody with blue eyes who plays tennis. And now he's fallen in love with this extraordinary exotic beauty. And all of this is played out against this backdrop of colour you've never seen before in the South Pacific, on an island which does exist, but not in that way. And Juanita Hall's performance of Bali High is quite something, I think. And in that song, there's prophecy and passion. There's an extraordinary thing. If you try, you'll find me where the sky meets the sea. Come to me, your special island. Here I am, come to me. So she builds this notion of mythical longing, which of course is fantastic because it's Shangri-La, it's everything. And the melody and the words sit together. It's terrific writing. The melodic line, la da 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 ya da da la da dee ma da 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 la da da ya da da. It's like waves or wind across the trees, and the arc of the song is really sure-footed. It's got the, when it comes to its middle eight, your own special hopes, your own special dreams, need on the hillside, die in the streams. Now it stays there if you try, and it comes back in to drive the melody home. And it's absolutely, it's consummation, and it's sexual, and it's longing. It's absolutely fantastic. And that launches the musical, it launches the film. And I can't do every song from the film, obviously, but My Girl Back Home, I just want to concentrate on this thing, which is text, because it recurs throughout anything that I would count really as an influence. Text, commitment, passion, politics, melody, and tone. And Juanita sings with an extraordinary, I mean, it's a mezzo voice, but it's got a lot of character. It's not a straightforward mezzo voice. And you get it's repeated all the time, this notion of taking and playing with tension and release in the songs. So you get in this My Girl Back Home song that Cable sings, my girl back home. This is when he knows it's all going wrong. I almost forgot, he almost forgot, a blue-eyed kid, I liked her a lot. We got engaged, both families were glad. And I was told by my uncle and dad that if I was clever and able, they'd make me a part of the partnership. Cable, cable, and cable. And now the verse changes into this chorus, and it's full of wistful understanding. How will this young man ever negotiate what he's learning on this island with where he comes from and what is stamped into him like rock? Because the expectation of his life runs through him, and it's now been absolutely devastated. And he sings, how far away, Philadelphia, PA, Princeton, NJ, how far are they? From coconut palms and banyan trees and coral sands and Tonkinese. And then you get the absolute cruncher song, the real cruncher, which when the musical was first put on its feet, the producer said, we cannot sing this song on Broadway. We cannot have this song on Broadway. 1958, so this would have been before that, obviously, because this is the film. And Emile Debec confronts Cable, and he says, you know, you have to understand that what you're thinking is wrong. And he says, and Cable says, it's not born in you, it happens after you're born. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. It's got to be drummed in your dear little ear. You've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are oddly made and people whose skin is a different shade. You've got to be carefully taught. Then it goes to the little reprise, the middle of middle eight. You've got to be taught before it's too late, before you are 6 or 7 or 8. To hate all the people your relatives hate, you've got to be carefully taught. You've got to be carefully taught. It's an extraordinary song. And they kept it in. And Debec says, this is the kind of ugliness I was running away from. It has followed me all this way, all these years, and now it has found me. So what South Pacific did for me was it taught me what a musical form could carry. It taught me that a musical form could do much more than be just mass entertainment. Not that there's anything wrong with mass entertainment. Nothing I say implies a criticism of anything else. But what it did was teach me that you could tread with great lightness through things that are quite tricky, and you could achieve extraordinary things with music and words when bonded together in the right way. So I was ready and open for that. I was 5 when I heard that, and I was a sieve, and all of that went in. So by the time I heard Tamla Motown, I was doomed already. Everything was already doomed, because Tamla Motown then took me somewhere else. And I grew up in one of the greatest periods of British music, I think. Pop music was happening around me as I was growing up. So the radio went from crooners and Nat King Cole into elemental pop music, into Adam Faith and Billy Fury. And that little change, that tiny little change that then went to the Beatles, set us up for something that none of us could have expected, which was Berry Gordy's massive influence on music for the rest of certainly my life, with Tamla Motown. And I think in the Northwest at that time, we used to go to the youth club. And in the youth club, the DJ would write to Stax in Memphis, Tennessee, and he would write to people he knew in Detroit. He would write letters and send money, having never met these people, having never spoken to them on a telephone, and they would send records back. And we would dance to them in a Methodist church hall, aged kind of 12, in the Northwest. And I one of the reasons that Mary Wilson and I bonded so much when we first got chatting was that she'd done the same thing in London. There was something about that music that touched certain people in a certain way, and then it never went away, and the singles were quite extraordinary pieces. We've learned in music now not to dismiss popular music and not to try to compare the score of something like, for the sake of argument, Carmen with the score of Where Did Our Love Go? Because the score of Where Did Our Love Go is not the text. The text is the record, because the text in those popular music pieces, and particularly in things like Motown, is the bass line and the sax solo. It's the words, it's the melody, it's the production, it's everything together makes the text. The notion of the text is changed by what you're listening to. And when you listen to Where Did Our Love Go? And that's the link for you on this, you hear all kinds of things. You've got the 4 to the floor beat, but what you've got is this swing in it. And it's a swing that comes from all of the musicians who were all Detroit jazz musicians who worked at night till 3 and 4 in the morning in various speakeasies, and then got up and came and played the sessions for Berry Gordy during the day. So they brought all of their jazz inflection, even though they were playing probably for them incredibly simple things, they brought with them, it ain't got a thing if it ain't got that swing. Don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. They brought swing into it. So those records move. You can't help but feel the movement. And that record really, you start with this bum 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 bum. It's there right the way through. And then you start in with that baby, 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 don't leave me. Please, now there's 4 repeating bars, and they happen from the beginning to the end of the song. So Ba-dum, 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 ba-da-dum, ba-dum, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da. And then that repeats and repeats and repeats with very, very little change. And the backing vocals do the baby, baby. But the end result of it is momentous. It's an extraordinary piece of work. And it launches, Diana Ross had already fronted Baby Love before that, but somehow everybody could see, and I could hear, what an extraordinary singer Diana Ross was, because she's not a great singer. She hasn't got a great voice. Her instrument isn't the best instrument in the world, but what it does with those tracks, with those records, is make something that's far greater than the sum of the whole. And it's just, it's a wonderful thing to see and hear her, and hear that wispy, fragile voice do these things that are quite odd. With this very little, she does a great deal. There's a wonderful thing on Tamla Motown Nerds, I have to tell you, where they analyse that song quite wonderfully. And they say that emotionally, when it comes to conveying the direct, full-on anguish of a broken heart, there's never been anyone who even comes close. I mean, I think we could probably debate that. But there's frailty in Diana Ross's voice. And so something happened, because I started to understand that unique voice was something that I cared about. I cared about that. I cared about voices that stood out. Voices that I could instantly recognize, voices that conveyed something other than the words and the melody through the timbre, through the experience of the person, through whatever it was you were getting. And Tamla Motown was full of that, because then you get Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye springs out of, he was a drummer. And once you know that, you know everything you need to know about the way Marvin Gaye phrases. You listen to I Heard It Through the Grapevine, which I've sent you the link for. And I think it's a lesson in somebody who absolutely understands all the things that musicians talk about, the pocket of a song. Where does the rhythm sit in a song? How do you sit in the pocket of a song as a singer? Well, Marvin Gaye's an absolute masterclass in knowing how to be in the pocket of a song. He knows exactly where the rhythm is and how far he can pull either side of it without it sounding like jazz back phrasing, without it sounding like being in front, without it doing anything except making you feel that he's in there. And then he brings that extraordinary quality which all of those singers brought in the Tamla Motown canon, which was a learning of singing from the church. And there you get an extraordinary tension in that gospel singing of that time, because you've got very tight harmonies and very tight rhythmic lines against which the solo singer extemporizes. So you've got this tension and release all the time, and then places where the solo singer will come back to the body of the song. And all of the Tamla Motown singers knew how to play with that tension and release. But Marvin Gaye was a master of it, absolutely a master of it. And when he extemporizes, when he inflects, when he uses his ornamentation, it's never too much. It's never at the expense of the song. It's never at the expense of the melodic line. It never drags you away from the tune. And it never sends you to the singer's ego. You don't go, oh, he's doing this because he knows he can. There are people, you hear it and you go, I know you're doing that because you want to show us you can. That's the minute that's happened, that's a lost game. That's a zero-sum none. But Marvin Gaye never does that. He knows exactly how to balance those things. And it's a quite extraordinary thing to listen to, I think. Then he does another extraordinary thing. He himself becomes involved in his own songwriting, and we get what's going on. We get songs that reflect the social upheaval of his lifetime. So we're back to politics, we're back to unique voice, we're back to melody, we're back to text, and we're back to politics and passion. And he he gives, and he's not the only one. Then inside the Motown writing canon, you get it in Diana Ross's song, Started My Life in a worn down, broken down tenement shack. My father left, he never even married, but single motherhood. You get all of these new narratives in pop music. So it's doing exactly what South Pacific did. It's taking things and bringing them to the forefront of an audience who maybe haven't thought about how those things impact on their own lives. And certainly with Tamla Motown, which of course Berry Gordy very cleverly creates to sell the African American sound in a way that's palatable to a mass audience, by which he of course means a white American audience. He pulls that off. And it's a marvelous, marvelous thing. And in the process, he gives us some of the greatest singing voices in recorded, it's certainly in my lifetime, in recorded lifetime. Marvin Gaye, Little Michael Jackson, Stevie Wonder, Tammy Terrell, Martha Reeves. It's person after person after person who you hear 2 bars of and you know exactly who it is. And these stylistic things, it is a genre, it's definable stylistically, but it absolutely transcends the genre it's in. And I think that's a wonderful thing, a really wonderful thing. I went to the, I don't want to talk too much about this because I won't have room for Nina Simone and Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, and that would be fatal. But I went to see the Berry Gordy story because my old agent, who's a friend, said, listen, I've got first night tickets. Do you want to come? And I was at yoga and I texted her back and said, have you got anybody coming? She goes, no. So I went, yeah, I'd love to come to that. So I go to the first night of the Berry Gordy story, Tamla Motown, whatever it was called. And I was deeply disappointed in it because Berry Gordy is an extraordinary man. In order to have done what he did, he was as tough as old boots, and he was full of fire and brimstone. And the musical tells a different Berry Gordy story, and it's a story he wanted to tell of himself. And if you can't reinvent yourself, who can you reinvent? So, you know, that's all fine. But I thought it was a missed opportunity because he had such an interesting life. And I thought, oh, why didn't we get that? Why didn't we get that? But we didn't. That's fine. And then they did another thing, which really annoyed me, which was that all the tempos were put together so that they could mash up songs. So you'd get, for example, you'd get Where Did Our Love Go beside a Stevie Wonder song. And the tempos of those original songs are different. And they're different because they were meant to be different. And now they were all the same. And it really annoyed me. And I thought, oh, everybody's going to do a standing ovation at the end of this because it's just that kind of a show. And I got crosser and crosser. And I just sat there like the Grunch, or Grinch, whatever it's called, thinking horrible thoughts about all of it. And the end came and everybody jumped on their feet and started cheering. And I said, yes, you see, it's just that it's Pavlov's dog. I was furious. And then they brought Berry Gordy on the stage. And I found myself jumping up and down and screaming at the top of my voice, Berry Gordy, it's Berry Gordy. So for me, the evening had suddenly been made a wonderful evening. Catherine said, do you want to come to the party? And I said, first night parties when you're not in the cast. I don't think it's a good idea. And she said, oh, well, I won't go then. And I felt bad. So I said, oh, I'll come with you. And I'm in yoga clothes. So we go there. And I said, what's that over there? She said, that's the VIP area. I said, oh, come on, we'll go in. She goes, no, you can't go in there. I said, of course you can go in there. So I went in the VIP. Nobody stopped you. You know, I'm in yoga clothes. Why would they stop me? I walked in and there's Mary Wilson. Now, I know somebody who works with Mary Wilson, who I work with. So I said, hiya. I said, do you know my friend Jim Gavin? She goes, yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm talking to Mary Wilson. And I go, oh, he's a friend of mine too. And she goes, who are you? And I go, Barb. And she went, Barb. And we had a big hug. And all the time I'm going, I can't believe this. This is such an extraordinary moment for me. Berry Gordy came in, surrounded by men with curly whirlies. It's quite a useful thing being short. I don't often say that, but actually you can duck underneath people. And I ducked underneath the men with the big brawn arms and pushed up like a koi pew up the front of Berry Gordy. And I said, hello, Mr. Gordy, can I have a quick word? And he was so taken aback, and they were so taken aback. They said, yeah. And I said, I just wanted to tell you, you know, what you did to me, what your music meant to me. growing up in the Northwest and how it changed everything I thought about popular music. And he said, come and have a picture with me. Come and meet some people. And I went home. I was on air for about 2 weeks because that's how much of an influence Tamla Motown was in my life. About the same as Nina Simone. Everything I know about Nina Simone led me to Nina Simone. Anything I knew about jazz led me to Nina Simone. I put Pirate Jenny on there, and it's Nina in her absolutely uncompromising self. What do I get from Nina? I get an understanding that you can take any song from anywhere. No one can tell you can't. Because you're a jazz musician, you can't sing a folk song. Because you're a woman, you can't sing a song by a man. Because you're not German, you can't sing Kurt Weill. She did whatever she wanted to do for the communication. She didn't give a damn about her audience. She didn't give a damn about how people responded to her or all she cared about was her own communication with the piece out. And that to me is an extraordinary position to have. I mean, she went through a lot to get to that, as we all know. But she starts on the YouTube clip I've given you saying, I've transported Jenny from a flop house in Germany to a flop house in North Carolina, where she's going to kill everyone in the flop house. And then the next day she'll go home. And it's just this very clean, clear understanding of the song. She's got the song right the way through. And she uses her voice in a quite remarkable way because she doesn't care about the beauty of the voice. There's an awful lot of singing where what you're trying to do is to keep a level quality of tone and to keep a certain kind of timbre and to keep a certain kind of dynamic throughout whatever it is you're performing. And Nina Simone does none of that. Callas did none of that. Nina Simone does something quite different. She does exactly what the song needs. And if the song needs her to, she'll do it. If the song needs some guttural thing from the belly of her being, that's what she'll do. She does what the song requires her to do in the moment of performing it. I'm not even going to begin to go into the fact that her piano playing, her jazz chops are off the chart. But she gave me an understanding that you could do all of those things. Her voice does everything. It's got love and war and peace and fire and fury and rage and joy and grief and some kind of collective understanding of pain. She's phenomenal. When she died, I was driving back from a gig in Brighton. I was on the M23 and it was one of those stormy nights where every so often the moon comes out from the clouds. And the radios, we were interrupting tonight's programme to say that the legendary singer Nina Simone has died. I didn't know Nina Simone personally. I mean, I'm lucky to have known a number of great people, but I didn't know Nina Simone. So I found myself surprised that I was weeping. And as I pulled in, and the moon came out from behind the clouds, and I got my pen and my pad out of the glove box, and I wrote a lyric straight out, which I called Hymn to Nina. And about several years later, Lawrence Hobgood said to me, shall we write a song together? And I said, yeah, okay. And he was in America and I was over here. And he said, have you got anything to send me? And I sent him the lyric of Hymn to Nina. And the next day he called me back and played me what he'd written musically from the lyric down the phone. And we recorded it. And I've put the link of us playing it at Pizza Express Dean Street, because everything I feel about Nina Simone is in that song. And Lawrence nailed in the piano playing something about the quality of the way that Nina Simone approaches her piano arrangements. So I think it really is, for me, in the sense of the word, a tribute. She brought a commitment to singing and performing a song, and it didn't matter who'd written the song. It didn't matter if it was her own or somebody else's. She brought a level of commitment to it that was absolute. It was total, and I learned that from Nina Simone. And if I can do that, then I'm a happy person, I'll tell you. which brings me to Bob Dylan and Leonard Cohen, and I can't leave them out. Now, Leonard Cohen's slightly out of sequence here because he was with me from very early on, because I heard Bird on the Wire and thought it was remarkable. And everything I ever heard him do since then, I thought was remarkable. Everything, even Hallelujah, which I'm quite happy if I never hear again, but even Hallelujah, which I just really have had enough of. And I certainly don't want to hear anybody else sing it. But, you know, Tom Jones's Tower of Song was a perfect example of how you can take a Leonard Cohen song and everything that's Leonard Cohen in it and get it, because Tom Jones singing it gave you that entire message again in a different way. Some of the most beautiful love songs ever written, but also this extraordinary, again, text in Suzanne. And Jesus was a sailor when he walked upon the water, and he spent a long time watching from his lonely wooden tower. And when he knew for certain only drowning men could see him, he said, all men will be sailors then, until the sea shall free them. But he himself was broken long before this spell was spoken. Forgotten, almost human. He sank beneath, forsaken, I beg your pardon, almost human. He sank beneath your wisdom like a stone. They're extraordinary, extraordinary lyrics. That gave me my first foray into interpretation. And Russell Cherney and I sang that song. And I remember when we first did it at the King's Head, and I recorded it on Bear. And I still use that arrangement. I still have that arrangement. It still works for me. It carries us through all the moods. And I think we got somewhere with that arrangement and we kept it. And he has all of the same things: passion, commitment, a voice that's not a perfect voice, but a voice that gives you everything he's feeling from the place he's feeling it. A voice that's broken and tested and sometimes euphoric, and a joy and commitment to being in the moment of being on a stage. So the clips I've given you of him are from the 2019 concert, which of course is just before he dies. And the voice, although rattled, is still there. And he picks up the guitar and you just can see all of it still there. It's quite wonderful. So that's going to bring me to Bob Dylan. And I don't know when it was that I knew I'd missed Bob Dylan, but I know when I found him. And it was maybe as though I'd always been looking for him. And by him, I mean his work, his songs, his texts. And it was Blind Willie McTell, which I heard played in another room when we gave my then mother-in-law the previously unreleased box set, which this song came out on, because the song didn't come out when it was supposed to. It was recorded for Infidels, but it was left off the recording. And it's very, very loosely based on the St. James Infirmary blues, very loosely based. But it holds something of that tradition in the way that Dylan is able to do that. And he has two versions of it, and I did two different versions of it. And there's something about that song which gives you the whole history of America. And I find it a deeply moving song to sing, because the images are so crystalline. Seeing the arrow on the doorpost saying this land is condemned, all the way from New Orleans to Jerusalem. Well, I travelled through East Texas where many martyrs fell, but nobody sings the blues like Blind Willie McTell. And he discusses in it the history of slavery. He discusses these extraordinary things, but lyrically in a way that allows you to touch them in a different way. It was as though somebody had thrown back a curtain for me, and I came away from that knowing that there was something that I had to find out. And so when I started to listen, I couldn't believe what I hadn't known. I couldn't believe that I'd missed those things. I couldn't believe that I didn't know how important that material was. I think he's the Shakespeare of America. I forgive all the shitty lyrics in some of the songs, because there are some shitty Shakespeare plays. I forgive all of it because as a body of work, there's nothing like it. It's quite extraordinary, except perhaps for Leonard Cohen's. And I know we're going to say, why are you leaving out Joni Mitchell? And I am leaving out Joni Mitchell because she didn't do what this did to me. She did other things, but not in this way, not in this visceral way. For me, everything I've shared with you, I hope, is about a visceral connection. The influences that I feel from all of this material they're embodied. They're all of these great words that we use now: authentic, embodied, they're truthful, they're direct. Even Tamla Motown with the long frilly gowns and the wigs and the things that I guess now we might pour scorn upon are authentic and truthful in the moment of what they're trying to do. There they are. And they're groundbreaking. Every one of these things is groundbreaking. So I wanted to leave you with So Long Marianne, again from that 2019 concert. And if you have time, if you're remotely interested in any of these pieces that I've talked about, I've put all the links there. Thank you so much, Wendy. Wendy has put them all here. But I mean, oh, look at this in So Long Marianne. Let me find the verse that I wanted to share with you. It was okay. So for me, it starts right at the beginning of the song, but it goes where you need it to go here. Well, you know that I love to live with you, but you make me forget so very much. I forget to pray for the angels, and the angels forget to pray for us. So long, Marianne, it's time we began to laugh and cry and laugh about it all again. We met when we were almost young, deep in the green lilac park. You held on to me like I was a crucifix as we went kneeling through the dark. And my favourite, your letters, they all say that you're beside me now. Then why do I feel alone? I'm standing on a ledge and your fine spider web is fastening my ankle to a stone. Thank you so very much for inviting me to do this. I hope I haven't spoken for too short a time or too long a time, Wendy, but thank you for asking me to do this, because going back to this and going over it has been, has given me something that I didn't know was there, and forced me to think about these things. And I'm incredibly grateful to you for inviting me to do this. Thank you so much.
Well, Barb, that really was magnificent. I sort of, I don't know, I'll try and unmute all so we can do a quick round of applause. Everybody give a round of applause. Inadequateness of the applause experience.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to unmute everybody now again. So Barb, that was just amazing. Somebody put in the chat to me individually while I was while you were speaking, saying this is a fantastic masterclass. Will the recording be available? And yes, I wanted to say that yes, the recording definitely will be available, and I'll put it up as soon as I can on the Academy of Ideas website. And I have to say, I will listen to it again myself, because I just felt you packed so much in there that made it sort of, I just feel like I've got to go back and listen again and learn some more, because everything you said just rang so true of the artistic experience. And the thing I forgot to say right at the beginning is this is part of a series that I had asked you to speak on Ask an Artist What Makes Art Work. And I think you really answered the question quite beautifully. So, really fully. So I'm really appreciative of that. Let me just unmute you so you can appear again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Questions. This is a time where people can have questions, comments, do their own sort of make their own suggestions or whatever for brilliant, you can try and compete with Barb if you dare about brilliant music.
There are many people here that I see, who I know their music. So, and I did want to say that the very, very first group I appeared publicly in, one of my co-musicians is in the Zoom group tonight, and that's Sue Hart, and that was the very first group that I ever had, which was when I was a teenager in Stockport, and we played around Stockport, and we played with our guitars and our long hair, and we sang. I think we did Grace Slick, didn't we? And we did some Leonard Cohen, I'm pretty sure. Sue will have to remind me, but Sue's got. Well, I think one of the people that played with us has got all the notebooks still, and that was something I found that out.
Good. Okay. All right. So I've got a few hands here. So I'll just run down this. Now, I should have said, I've just seen somebody put up their hand. What you should do is go to the thing at the bottom of the bar, participants, click on it, and that should open a column to your right. And if you look at the bottom of that column, there should be a sign that says raise hand. And that means that I can see you. I can't see who you are. Anyway, I'll try and find you and come to you. Mary Glennon. Okay, Mary Glennon. I'll come to you in a bit. Okay. Shirley, can you unmute yourself? I think that's probably the best. Yeah, well done.
Okay.
Baby.
Barb, thank you.
Hi, Shirley. Hi.
Hiya. That was, oh gosh, I can't tell you how that took me down memory lane, because I think we grew up at the same time. And I have to say, I've never given, you've made me think about music in a particular way, and about really what it meant then and what it means now. And I just wanted your sort of views about it, because it seems to me that when I was growing up, and like you, you know, sort of I came across lots of, let's say, popular music. Well, I used to run home from school at primary school at lunchtime to play my dad's records, and it could be anything from Tennessee Ernie Ford to Mario Lanza. You know, my dad was a plumber, but quite an eclectic taste in music. But the point was, I think then, the youth club, doing what I did at school, they were things that they were sort of quite special activities in the sense that you had to choose to do the activity. And it seems to me that now, over the years, music has become much more of a part of everyday life, from being in the supermarket and it just, you know, the jingles or whatever, to it being all around, and being absolutely much more accessible for everybody than it certainly was when I was young. And I just wondered whether you think that, you know, what difference that makes, and whether that's good, or whether, you know, would you agree that there is something different going on now about what music is and what it was then? And is it less special now than it was in the past? Okay.
Oh, that's a really difficult question to answer, isn't it? I don't know. And I'd hesitate to say that. Oh, Shirley, I've lost your face. You've gone. I'd hesitate.
Oh no, yeah, sorry. It's because I.
Oh, don't do that, please, because I want to see, because I want to answer you. I'd hesitate to say there are things about ubiquity and not ubiquity, and value. All of those things are questions and important, and I think you could probably have an IOI debate on every single one of those, and you could have 18 panels on every single one of them, and they'd all say different things, you know, with really eminent people. And my own feeling as a practitioner is that there's a certain wonderfulness in being able to sit down with a computer and go, I want to see Nina Simone now, and I can. And I couldn't do that, you know, 20, 30 years ago. I couldn't do that. So that's a wonderful and valuable tool. And there's something great about anybody anywhere being able to access things and communicate about them. That's also wonderful. Difficult, I think, is that music becomes meaningless. And I don't know whether that's a true thing or whether it's a thing that I feel because that constant backdrop, a bit like if you had great master paintings everywhere in your house, every single one was a great master, would you tire? I don't know. I was in Sainsbury's and they were playing Christmas music, and I said to the lady on the till, because it's my mission to bring joy to people who work on tills, I said, "Are you fed up of this already?" And she said, "Oh," she said, "it's like being in church, isn't it?" And it was, I thought it was particularly nice tape, actually, because it wasn't, rocking around. It was, she went, "Oh no, I'd like those rock and roll ones." And I thought, "Oh, isn't it exciting how different we are?" I said, "By Christmas Day, you won't want to hear any of these ever again." She said, "No, that's a fact." And I think there is something about the wearing down of the ears if you're all the time listening. I don't like to listen to music if I'm on the way to a gig. And when I've played a gig, I don't particularly, I want to listen to people talking. I find it quite hard to listen to music because you've just been making it. But this afternoon, when I was tracking down some more, and I just went in a rabbit hole on the YouTube, and I found a John Wright trio. Niall, do you know the John Wright trio? The John Wright trio are, he's obscure. It's some of the best piano jazz. It's so soulful. And it's called something like Southside Soul. There's a tiny Wikipedia entry where they've got one line from All Music, which is really scathing about how obscure he is. And it's extraordinarily beautiful work. So I then wrote to every piano player I know and did a Facebook post and tagged all the other piano players saying, "Do you know this? Have you heard this?" A number of people have come back to me who are really informed, who've gone, "No." So I sort of think there's something about the accessibility that's good, and that equally there's something about the wallpaper effect that might be less good. The excitement that I think we felt was particular, and I think that's because we were just really, really lucky. We were really lucky. Post-war, post-trauma, I mean, different kind of trauma, perhaps for me, different trauma in your family, but not actually trauma that you're experiencing firsthand yourself. And then a land of plenty for quite a long time until a global pandemic, actually, So I sort of feel that we were very, very lucky. And right at the time when real musicians were playing music in a new form, the Beatles, we saw that come before us. So I just feel we were sort of lucky, really. I don't know if that answers the question.
I'm sure it does, but I'm not giving her another chance. Okay, Mary Glennon, I'll ask you, yes, if you would like to speak up now.
All righty. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Mary.
Barb, hi. I can't wait until you come back to New York.
Oh
my gosh.
Thank you.
Cannot wait. First of all, you happen to have picked my favorite Stevie Wonder song, which is really hard to even choose one. But I was wondering, have you ever been to Hitsville in Detroit?
No, I haven't, no. And I thought I was going to be able to go, and then for some reason the gig didn't happen. I mean, that's happened a couple of times with things, but I did manage to meet Berry Gordy, and I sort of feel I can live with everything now because of that. I feel I had my picture with Berry Gordy. I can die happy.
If you go there, and it's worth, even if you don't have a gig there.
No, I'd love to.
To make a pilgrimage, it's really a pilgrimage there.
Yes.
And you can see, it's a house. I mean, I guess you probably know that. It's just all the neighborhood people, Marvin Gaye's, live down the street, so smoky. Yeah. The room where Stevie recorded I Was Born to Love Her.
Yeah.
I started crying. It's so moving. And it's about as big as one's living room. And then just the only other thing I want to mention real fast is you were talking about the speaker before, Shirley, about music being more accessible. I found back in our day, when we had AM radio, we would hear the Stones, Isley Brothers, Gene Pitney. Yeah. Then they would go, you know, Roger Miller, then go back to, you know, the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, all the same day, all the same, like 2-3 hours.
Yeah.
And then when they changed the format, at least in the States, to like FM, adult oriented, or whatever the heck they did, nobody heard everything, you know, together.
Yes.
So everybody has their very own stratified taste. And, you know, I guess as an older person, I think that's really sad, because I liked hearing the Isley Brothers and then hearing Roger Miller.
Well, I think that was what was so great about the Bob Dylan radio hours, where he took his fans to his own listening and played such a wide span of music. I mean, yes, all of it Americana, but music that would be genre separate on a radio station. And I think that's why people love those sessions.
And in my very, very small town that I grew up in, Central Illinois,
we
were all listening to this, all of it. So it was
really...
ask
somebody else to speak, Mary, sorry.
Anyway, Barb, I can't wait to see you again.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mary. And I will go to Detroit. I haven't been to Nashville yet. You know, I mean, there's a...
whole world, yeah.
I've been to everywhere, but I've never been to me. We used to sing that in Girl Talk. Oh my Lord, what a terrible song. And you made me think of sometimes I listen to the radio and I found that's the place to be. And then I saw an AM jock, but the day you married me, it was 2 years and I was into FM rock, but I just couldn't stop playing around. It's been 10 years since you left me, babe. Let me tell you what's gone down. I am the morning DJ on radio, on WOLD, playing all the hits for you. Sorry, sometimes I've got a brain full of lyric.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, Josephine, over to you. Can you unmute yourself and video yourself? Yes, good.
Hello. Hi there.
Hi.
Hi, thank you so much. That was just so wonderful. And I'm particularly, there were two things I really wanted to say. One was that I love the fact that you started with musicals, because I am a big musicals lover and I always have been. I'm a girl from South London. My mum was Irish, so I grew up with Irish music and country music.
Yes. And
that was my childhood. And then Stevie Wonder and Sir Duke reminds me of growing up. And what I loved about the way you took us through it was that you just reminded me of how music was the backdrop to my life, really, and my childhood in particular, and my mum's life. But also that what I loved was the openness that you had towards musicals as well, because for me, musicals were the place that took me somewhere else. And I always really loved them. And I always felt that people were quite snobbish about them. And like you said, they kind of saw it as popular culture rather than something that they really are. And Bloody Mary, I always found her quite scary and quite sinister.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what the character's name that Jonathan Pryce played in Miss Saigon, but I always felt he was a similar character.
Yeah, well, you know, they
desperate to have a different life and seeing his opportunity through the troops that are that are in Saigon, in the same way that Bloody Mary saw some opening for her life.
And that Mother Courage saw the war. I mean, it's a trope that's through a lot of things.
Yeah.
The woman who uses that difficulty to carve out some tiny, with a I mean, and she does at the beginning, doesn't she? Bloody Mary, she comes on with her stuff and hangs it up, and she's quite happy for people to make fun of her, because actually she's the smart one.
Yeah, exactly. And the Jonathan Pryce character in Miss Saigon, he's exactly the same. He allows himself to be kind of taken the mickey out of by the troops because he wants to get on in life. Yeah. The question that I wanted to ask you was, how do you feel about Sondheim? Because you talked about the text, and Sondheim is kind of like almost the sort of intellectual writer of musicals. He's kind of become the more acceptable face of musicals. And I wondered whether you felt that he was good as storyteller as maybe Rodgers and Hammerstein and people like that.
Oh, don't you put me on the spot like that. You know, I was not, I'm a recent comer to Sondheim, and I'll tell you why. Because I had only really ever seen Sondheim done in England. And Mary, because of going to New York and because of having friends in New York, I started to realise that Sondheim was actually a voice of a very particular thing, a very particular kind of sophistication, if you like, of text. And it was very New York intellectual to me. And I couldn't somehow get inside it here. And then I was working in America at the Eugene O'Neill Connecticut summer thing that I teach at when I'm lucky enough to be invited to teach there. And they had a Sondheim evening where they put together John McDaniel, who does know Stephen Sondheim and indeed calls him Steve, and had people whose first roles were definitive roles in these various musicals, and I watched them rehearse and I watched them perform, and I went, that's why I didn't get it. I get it now. Mm-hmm. I get it now. And it was something in the way that 100 million people getting on the train. When I saw that done by, I have to go and look things up because I can remember lyrics, but pretty much nothing else. Who am I? What am I? Where am I? But when I saw that performed, I just thought, aha, I get it now. Now I understand. And since then, I have gotten more and more out of Sondheim. And I think now I actively turn to it now. And I've had friends who nagged me for years to do this and are now just going, see, I told you. See, I told you. And they're happier.
Thank you. Yes.
But yes, I think, I don't know about the acceptable face, because I think there have been all, I mean, in a funny kind of way, this is just a really weird thing to come out of my own mouth. But I think Andrew Lloyd Webber did that. And I think it's so tricky, the Lloyd Webber thing, because he's such a particular person, but he did an extraordinary thing. I mean, he got British musicals on a stage in a way that hadn't happened since Oliver. And I don't even have words for, I mean, Oliver is such a great piece of work. What a great piece of work is Oliver. In this life, one thing counts, in the bank, larger amounts. Oh, I mean...
I'll go on all night if you
that's enough, Josephine.
Someone else.
Your turn. Okay, Bridge, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, have you got me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Barb. Hello, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too.
Barb, I love your music, and I was thrilled to see the list that you were going to talk about tonight, because you've always come across as being so normal, but so extraordinary at the same time, because you've got such talent and enthusiasm and skill.
Well, that's very kind. Thank you.
That was
very much. I have to say, during the course of this lockdown, I think all of us have been thinking, who am I? What am I?
The song that really appealed to me, and it was great to hear you talk about it tonight, was Willie McTell.
Yes.
About the Bob Dylan one. And I'll be honest, I didn't know that was a Bob Dylan song until after I'd heard you sing it, and I looked it up. Yeah. And it's interesting that, why is it that he it was never one that was hugely associated with him, and it took him a long time to make something of it or to sing it in public, apparently. So, what was it? Was there something wrong with his version of it, or was there something that you wanted to rectify?
No.
Version?
No, I never feel that. I never feel that there's something wrong and that's why I would sing a song. I wanted to sing it because it was an extraordinary piece of writing, and because I liked the melody, and I have a love of that kind of blues form. So I wanted to sing it for those reasons, and it's a transformative song. There are moments in Dylan's writing where, and he talks about it in his biography, because I think it's Daniel Lanois asks him when they're recording. They're down in Daniel Lanois' studio in the Deep South. I think they're in New Orleans, but somewhere in that area. They're around, they're around Pontchartrain, around all that stuff. and it's all, you know, your voodoo and you know, and all of that business, and they're recording, and it's day and night, and Dylan's riding a motorbike every day, and Daniel Lenoir says, can we have, what we need on this album is one of those Like a Rolling Stone songs. And Dylan says, the spirits who were with me when I wrote that aren't with me anymore. Something like that. The spirits that were with me, the spirit that was with me, that he puts it in such a way that makes clear that he knows that that communication is really not so much about him. And I think it's a wonderful expression that he gives to what he's doing. So Blind Willie McTell for me is one of those songs. It's a song that comes through him because there's something in the quality of that telling. See them big plantations burning, hear the cracking of the whips, smell that sweet magnolia blooming, hear the ghosts of slavery ships. I can hear them tribes a moaning. I can hear the undertaker's bell, but nobody sings the blues like Blind Willie McTell. It's extraordinary. Mm-hmm. You know, so singing that is it's a gift to sing that. So it wasn't, I didn't sing it because he didn't do a good job of it. I think, and he did 2 versions of it, but he's been notorious through his life of recording a lot of things and then going, no, not that, and then them coming out later, or him, you know, having refound them. And there's a version he does of in the lonely night and the silence of a pale moonlight, due to be black, Born in Time, where he had a fast version of it, and then he strips it down and does it slowly, and you hear that it's a completely different song. He constantly goes back to his own material, which I think is wonderful. He's fearless in that, you know, he doesn't feel he has to play his hits. Mm.
Okay, great. Okay, Mehdi, you're next. Can you unmute yourself?
Thanks, Wendy. Yep. Barb, thank you very much indeed.
Hi, Mehdi. Hi
there. Your enthusiasm is so infectious. Really, I've been sitting here really mesmerized by you. You seem to have been taken by Leonard Cohen. Actually, incidentally, I know a wonderful lady who was actually mesmerized by Leonard Cohen. But my question to you is, of all the singers, artists that you've mentioned, who has influenced you most and why?
Well, that was my point right at the beginning. Every single one of these, I couldn't separate out any one of them. They've all influenced me in some way. And because I think of these key things, they all have these same key things, which is a way of using the voice that's particular, of a uniqueness of vocal expression, of a fearlessness of understanding the text and communicating the text. If anything, I suppose South Pacific's the odd one out, but it's there because as a piece of performance, it also does those things. So it would be near impossible for me if I had to. You're going to make me do this, I know you want me to, so I'm going to do it. If I had to really float one to the very top and go, it's only because it's floating in the top because you've made me do it, it would be Nina Simone.
And if you were given a choice to go back to a particular decade, which decade would you like to be planted back to?
That's your last question, Mehdi.
It is indeed.
Do you know, I'm not a looker-backer, Mehdi, I'm not. It's just not the way I find that I don't want to go back. I'm pleased that I was there, and I'm pleased that I'm here. And today is today and tomorrow is tomorrow. I enjoyed musically the 60s and the 70s a great deal, But then came the 80s, and there were some good things then. And I mean, whoa, when did we get Bruce Springsteen? Really? We get him later. You know, when do we get, there are people who emerge, and then there are people that we never even knew were there. John Wright Trio. I can't tell you how good this album is. Southside Soul, I think it's called. The John Wright Trio. Wright spelt W-R-I-G-H-T. I don't know. I don't think I want to go back. I don't think there's anything to be gained from going back ever. I wish we can all learn from what we've done and what we've had. That's what I hope.
I think Wendy is going to murder me now. But I was really surprised that you didn't mention Frank Sinatra.
Well, because I couldn't mention everybody. What am I going to do? This talk would be the next 10 years. I mean, honestly, there's so many things that aren't here. I mean, I said at the time, Joni Mitchell's not here. There's Sandy Dennis not there. Sandy Denny, Fairport Convention, Richard Thompson. There are so many great people who all have had an influence, all of them. So I had to narrow this down, and maybe if you asked me this same question next year, I'd give you 4 different things.
I will be there. I will be there.
My dad called him Frankie Baby. My dad loved him. Frankie Baby, he used to say. It's Barbara, it's Frankie Baby on the television. He loved him.
Okay, Claire, you're next. Can you unmute? Yeah, good.
Yeah. One of the first times I heard you speak, Bob, you made me think about interpretation of song. You know, I think one of the problems is often that one becomes quite conservative. You know, I don't want you to bring out interpretations of Bob Dylan, because I love Bob Dylan. He's my Bob Dylan, and he talks to me. And so you kind of like, you kind of, and I know that you've had resistance sometimes when you've done albums. And so I wanted to just kind of think about that for a minute, because I also know that as a consequence of having an attachment to the original, I sometimes don't hear them. And what you made me do, I remember, was made me hear things that I hadn't even heard, because your interpretation I thought, where's that lyric come from? I thought you were making it up. Half the time I was thinking, oh, that's not in that song. But it was because I couldn't hear it, because it had a particular. So the reason I'm mentioning that is that then you kind of get into the whole question about covers. You know, what is a cover? What's the difference between a cover and just covering a song and it kind of just like being in the ether and everybody sings it, and a true interpretation, getting beneath the skin of it? Or is there any such thing? And you, in passing, just said, that's a terrible song. I can't remember what it was now. It was the one about, and then I Find Me, or what that one. Anyway, but you said, oh God, what an awful song. One of the things is, presumably not all lyrics, not all music can stand interpretation, because it's too thin. Do you know what I mean? And you could give it to maestros from all genres, and they'd still come up with the same kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that, and so therefore, that was really my question: why interpretation is so important, how that is different from just covering a song, and then how you stay true to the truth of the song, and are there certain songs, certain lyrics that just are not up to it? They just fall apart once you dig deeper.
Well, to me, a cover is, and I never think, if people want to stand up and sing a Bob Dylan song in the tube the way that they think it should be sung, that's their choice. That's fine. Claire, I've lost your face. Your face is.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's it. I was trying to get rid of I'm muted.
Oh no, don't, because I don't want you to mute. Don't mute yourself.
Right, I'm okay now.
And then I think if you're going to sing a song, I mean, this is just me. I think if you're going to sing a song, you're going to be bothered to sing a song. And it's different if you go to a karaoke evening. Lord knows I've had a lot of fun at karaoke evenings. My Gloria Gaynor is something to see, but that's by the by. But if you're going to do sing a song and ask people to come and listen to it, then I think you've got to do something. And I think that's where the Nina Simone thing comes for me, is that Nina Simone just went, this song is mine. Yes, it was yours, but now it's mine. Yes, Kurt Weill. Yes, yes, Bertolt Brecht. This is about Jenny in North Carolina, you know, and she absolutely owns that in a way that neither demeans the original. In fact, if anything, it exalts the original, which I think is the point. I think you have to exalt the original. What you do must exalt the text. It must. Otherwise, it's, for me, a failure. And I think that that's how I would describe the difference between those things. Some songs, well, I sometimes we just, you know, you'd be hanging around with the musos and having a laugh, and somebody will say, I can't wait for your version of Chirper, Chirper, Cheep, Cheep. And occasionally when I'm walking, I'll do it just for myself. I'll find a song that's impossible, and then I'll start seeing whether it's possible to do it. And of course it's not, but it's just endless hours of fun can be gained from doing that when you're striding about the place. No, some things don't hold up. And sometimes it's not about, I mean, there are some Dylan songs I can't sing. I mean, I love Isis beyond loving, but I've never been able to make it work. Who knows where the time goes? The Sandy Denny. I love it. I think it's a great song. Doesn't sing for me. I can't do anything with it. And I go, nothing I can do with that song. And then I hear Carol Grimes do it and turn it inside out. And so there's something about the mechanism in your own performance practice and the mechanism in the song that has to work together, I think. You know, and sometimes you get a job's a job, and you'll get a program and they say, can you come on and sing? And it'll be a song that you'd never have sung in a million years, and you do your damnedest with it and you do your best, but you know for yourself that it's not your wheel park, you know.
I'll tell you what's really funny is when somebody like you turns a song into what I then think of as the classic. And your version becomes the one that I think somebody else has misunderstood the song because they're not singing it as you are. And then I find out they wrote it. So what happens is you become attached to as well.
Yeah.
You know, for me, certain songs that you've sung, but other artists as well, that's their song. Like you said about Simone, she makes it her song, and therefore you hear somebody else and you think, oh, rubbish. But it's funny, isn't it? But the re-listening is the important thing that you do, I think. You help us re-listen to the lyrics in a way that very few artists do.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, I don't think it's a given, to be honest, because there's sometimes a thought that if you slow things, there's lots of things at the moment. For example, I don't know whether anybody has been watching The Undoing, but there's a version of Stars Shining Bright Above You, which of course is a Mama Cass piece of genius. I mean, Mama Cass had a great pop voice, great pop voice. And all they've done is slow it down, but they've slowed it down. And there's no sense of internal logic to the song. I mean, you know, I've been teaching a lot in lockdown, and I do a lot of this kind of work, and it just makes me furious. I have to skip things. I have to skip those things because I think I'm just going to start screaming, what are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing that? There's a need to get an internal logic to things, and it requires work, you know, but it's the least you can do, I think. You know. Okay, good. Paul Curry, you're next. Unmute yourself, please. Yeah, good.
Hi, Barb. Thanks very much for that. Great to hear your reflections. Now, can I just ask, in a time when Spotify seems to be devaluing, particularly young and upcoming artists, they're not getting the return on their streams that the established artists are. Do you think Bob Dylan has, through his recent publishing deal, found his true value, or is that a distraction from his actual worth?
Oh, that's a powerful load of stuff in one question, isn't it? I thought it was the smartest move that he and Jeff Rosen could make, actually. And I can explain what I mean. The streaming thing, I think if you were listening to the statistics yesterday, it's a very, very small percentage of artists make some money. But don't be deceived by that, because they're still not making the money they should have made. Were those pieces to be valued properly, by which I mean was the money to trickle to the people who actually made the music, as opposed to trickling to the record company and Spotify. And that's the issue. The issue is a bigger issue, because actually, I'm trying to think, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This, which is a very streamed song, deserves to earn the money it earns. And it probably streams more than Just Like a Woman. But Just Like a Woman and that, and my streams should all be earning some proper response to the money that's going in, which they are not. In the particular of Bob Dylan, I think that they looked at the future, and the future is more streams for less money. That's the future. And they went, what if we sell it now? And it's a prize. It's a huge prize. Mm. And they sell it now for money that's real now, rather than a diminishing return over years, not because the work isn't good, but because the mechanism isn't supporting the artist. Does that answer your question?
It does. May I ask a short follow-up question? It's about, how do we get young and upcoming musicians to earn enough to maintain them through the development of their craft? Because I work with a couple of small Scottish labels, and it's really difficult to get very talented individuals to get the time to dedicate to their music when they can't make money from it.
Well, I know. And I would say a bunch of things in response to that. Because of the whole changing of the circuit, because of streaming, because of the things that have affected everything, because of the decline in live music venues, there are all sorts of situations that have conspired to make it harder to make any kind of living. But honestly, I don't remember when I began to earn a living from the actual work. I worked in the Portobello Hotel. I did a stint as a receptionist. That was hilarious. You know, I did teaching. I don't know a jazz musician who doesn't teach. And I think that Dylan said, this is not a career. This is a vocation. Well, vocations don't come with career opportunities. And so I think that there's an expectation change that has to happen. And that doesn't mean that we don't pay attention to needing venues and needing places and supporting and mentoring and opening doors and fighting for correct recompense for recorded work. That doesn't mean any of those things. We've got to do all of those things. But I also think that there can't be an expectation that you're going to do anything than be able to. I feel happy if I can play and sing. This pandemic has taught everybody the same thing, which is I managed to do 2 shows in September, and it was like being let out of a cage. We played like we'd never played before. We played those 2 shows like we'd never played before. We do it because we love it. And it's great if we can earn a living from it, but I won't be while we've got social distance, I can tell you. Mm. And so I think it's a very tricky thing, because I don't want to discourage anybody from doing it. And I think if you want to do it, you do it, and you've got to do it. And you have to know that doing it is going to cost you something. And it may cost you making a living in another way. But you'll get all kinds of things back from it that you won't get from anything else.
That's a great
not particularly optimistic, I know, I'm sorry. And good luck to your artists, by the way.
Yeah, thanks.
I'd like to hear them.
I'll send you some links.
Please, I'd like that.
Great. So I've got one more question from Niall. Niall, I just wanted to give people a chance to raise their other hands. Or we'll just hear Niall's question and Barb's answer, and yeah, more or less end it there. But Niall.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yay, hello.
Hello. It's great. Really, really enjoyed that. It's great to hear you, and as ever, I get a head full of questions and things I want to say to you when I want to, spend the next couple of hours just chatting music, because I always feel like I've got so much in common with you. And I was thinking about how you, the thing you did for me more than anything when we kind of had a debate together a few years back at the Battle of Ideas was taken me completely by surprise, but also helped me get a massive chip off my shoulder when it comes to music, which I'm sure you kind of know what it is, really. I mean, I remember going into this discussion sticking my nose up at people like Dylan and Joni Mitchell, because like Josephine, I got this kind of, you know, everyone's really snobby about popular music, and you know, I was surrounded by people who seemed to be only interested in lyrics and, you know, stuck their nose up at black music. So it blinded me, and you were the first person I met who kind of bridged that gap. Who, as, you know, as you said about Motown, you really appreciated the, not visceral, the spiritual nature, I think, of music. It's not about to focus it, much what's happening. But yeah, it kind of, it opened up, it was a bit of a log jam for me, but it opened up, and my musical tastes have completely transformed. People talking about music today, and I think music's better today than it has been for a very, very long time. But just to illustrate what you, the kind of musical world you opened up for me, I've thought of a little anecdote, which somebody mentioned Laura Nyro, the 60s American songwriter, and it reminded me of something that happened a couple of years back. I was getting my hair cut in hairdressers in Angel. And my friends always, the guys always playing really interesting music on in the background there. I never know what comes on. And this song comes on, which is Marry Me Bill.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is originally Laura Nyro song, which I know as a soul fan by the Fifth Dimension.
Yeah.
I'm listening to this song thinking, who is that? It was a bloke. And, you know, my initial reaction was complete snobbishness. It was like, how dare they kind of thing. This kind of, clearly a rock singer singing this, you know, great soul song. And it just gradually wore me down. It's really nice, got a lovely charm to it and everything. And I realized that halfway through that it was someone who I have musically stuck my nose up at all through the last 30 years. And it was Morrissey. You know, I grew up, went to university, and everybody around me liked the Smiths, and it was all Morrissey's lyrics and his politics and everything. And I think it made me think of you, because it just, I think I learned from you to be able to just be open-minded and judge the music. I mean, sometimes I could do it, but I think you really helped me with that. And I spent the next year or so just ploughing through all of his solo work. And thanks for you, I ploughed through all of Dylan, and I ploughed through all of Joni Mitchell, people I'd stuck my nose up at before. And I listen to so much new music now. I think a lot of that is really thanks to you and to your enthusiasm. You teach me to be very, very humble. So yeah, great to hear from you. I'm really sorry we can't do it more often. And thank you to Wendy for doing it.
Hey, no, I wanted to just say, have you been watching the Small Axe films? Because I think that the soundtracks of the Steve McQueen films are absolutely brilliant. And if you haven't been watching them, they're all on iPlayer. But the Lovers Rock one, the second one, which is just about a house party. I mean, it's a film about a house party. I think it was a wonderful piece. But the soundtrack, and I thought of you when it was on. I thought of you, and I thought, oh, you're going to love this. You'll love this. And he plays some really obscure work. And the other day, the one on Saturday about Alex Wheatle, Sunday about Alex Wheatle, there was a lot of dub in that. And we listened to dub for ages when I was married to Dan Bowling. That was his thing, was dub, you know. And I remember when I very first taught a group of recalcitrant people in Stamford Hill and Stanmore. And I said, I'm going to play some Dr. Alimantado. And one of the kids came in the following week and said, I told my dad that you played as Dr. Alimantado. And my dad said, you should listen to her. She knows what she's talking about.
That's right. Yes, I'll have a listen to it.
Yeah. You'll love them. Really, honestly, terrific filmmaking. Anyway.
Okay, so that was brilliant, Barb. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to unmute all, and we can all give Barb a fantastic round of applause. And then I'm going to leave the unmute open. So if anybody wants to say anything more informally for a bit, we can just hang around just, for a little while, but, just see how things go. And Yeah, I just want to give you a huge thanks, Barb. That was really inspirational. I think the whole thing about the distinctive voice was something, I mean, I think that's something that you have, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love going to listen to you. And I love your storytelling as well.
Thank you.
Just the way you kind of tell us something through storytelling rather than anything, you know, that sort of hammers away at a kind of, I don't know, it's just, there's something about the way you tell us things that really gives the insights. So I want to thank you very much, and unmute everybody so we can give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to share it anymore.